The creepy last phone call before disappearance. The phone call was short, almost ordinary, but it carried a strange edge that no one understood until it was too late. It was the last phone call Brianna Maitland ever made. She told her friend she was going to meet someone after her late-night shift at the restaurant. Her voice was calm, but there was something unsettled in her tone, almost like she wanted to say more but decided not to. Hours later, her green 1985 Oldsmobile was discovered in one of the eeriest crime scenes Vermont had ever witnessed. The car was backed into an abandoned barn at a strange angle, one headlight still faintly glowing. The doors were unlocked. Her paycheck from work lay on the front seat. But Brianna was gone. The barn stood in a lonely stretch of road just outside Montgomery, Vermont. The night was cold and dark, the kind of night where silence clings to the trees. When police and passers-by came upon the scene, they couldn't make sense of it. It looked staged, as if someone had placed the car there deliberately. That night was supposed to be like any other for Brianna. She was 17, independent, restless, and full of dreams of chasing something bigger than small-town life. She had recently left high school and was figuring out her future. Earlier that day, she failed her driving test over a minor mistake. Later, she went shopping with her mother, Kelly. They laughed, but at one point Brianna stepped outside to talk to someone and returned visibly shaken. She brushed it off, hugged her mom goodbye, and headed to her shift at the Black Lantern Inn. It would be the last time Kelly saw her daughter. At the Black Lantern Inn, Brianna worked the dinner shift. She was cheerful, but tired. When the shift ended around 11:20 p.m., she collected her pay envelope and walked out to her car. To a coworker, she casually mentioned she might meet someone after work, but she didn't say who. Somewhere between leaving the restaurant and her car being discovered at the barn, Brianna vanished. She never made it home. She never showed up at her friend's house. Everything inside her car suggested she hadn't planned to disappear. At first, police didn't know what to make of it. Was it a runaway? A teenager deciding to disappear? Or something darker? Vermont wasn't known for high crime. Families left doors unlocked. That made her disappearance cut even deeper. Rumors swirled. Some said she had been lured by someone she trusted. Others whispered about drugs and dangerous acquaintances. But nothing explained the creepy details. The car angled into the barn, the missing girl, the eerie phone call hinting at a secret meeting. Her parents searched tirelessly. They put up posters, handed out flyers, and pleaded for information. The image of Brianna's car lodged in the barn spread nationwide, haunting anyone who saw it. Theories piled up. Had she been ambushed? Did she try to signal for help by ramming the barn? The barn itself became a landmark of dread. Drivers slowed when passing. Some swore they felt chills. Still, investigators found nothing. No footprints. No clear evidence. As if she had been swallowed by the night. Weeks passed, and then months. Every tip felt like hope, then heartbreak. A false sighting in New York. Another in Canada. Each collapsed. Friends remembered Brianna's unease. She had been making new connections, some in rougher circles. She confided fears, but didn't say who or what. That secrecy became the cruelest clue. And then, a tip shook everything. A man claimed he overheard a chilling conversation describing exactly what had happened to Brianna. The words were horrifying, too specific to ignore. Detectives leaned forward as the man told his story. He said he overheard two men talking about a fight, a struggle, and a cover-up. Brianna hadn't walked away. She had been overpowered and taken. Investigators pressed for names. He hesitated, afraid of retaliation, but eventually named locals not far from where her car was found. Police questioned them. Some denied knowing her. Others gave strange, inconsistent answers. But rumors in small towns move faster than facts, and soon, everyone had a story. Her family clung to hope, even as leads fizzled. Kelly replayed that afternoon outside the store when Brianna had looked unsettled. Was it a warning she had missed? Her father Bruce searched endlessly, driving roads, combing woods, knocking on doors. Investigators kept returning to the barn. Was it an ambush? A distraction? A message? The way the Oldsmobile pressed into the wall didn't feel random. Still, no answers. Then another tip came. A woman claimed Brianna had been held in a house near the Canadian border. Police searched the house. Empty. Quiet rooms, no signs of her. Some thought it was a cruel invention. Others weren't so sure. By then, the FBI had joined the case. Posters of Brianna went nationwide. But every lead collapsed. Still, her friends remembered her fear. One admitted she had been scared of someone in her new circle, but never said who. That silence screamed louder than words. Years later, investigators tried DNA testing from her car, hoping science might solve what witnesses could not. But even DNA gave no clear answers. Theories grew darker. Some whispered about trafficking, about Brianna being taken across the border. Others believed she was killed that night, hidden in Vermont's vast woods. Despite it all, her family refused to give up. On her 18th birthday, they held a vigil at the barn. Candles flickered against the scarred wood. People prayed and wept. The barn stood like a ghost. Investigators couldn't shake the creepy last phone call, ordinary words, but an ominous silence afterward. And then another chilling twist. In 2006, 2 years after Brianna vanished, searchers found torn fabric and personal items in remote woods. Investigators rushed them to the lab, hoping for DNA or fingerprints. But results came back inconclusive. Were they hers? Or just coincidence? One detective swore they were close, circling the truth. Then, from behind prison walls, a man serving time began to talk. He said he knew what happened to Brianna. His words were cold, confident, and too detailed to ignore. Detectives prepared for answers, or another cruel dead end. The prisoner claimed he had been there the night she disappeared. He said Brianna was lured after work, tricked into meeting people she thought she could trust. What began as a confrontation turned violent. She was struck, incapacitated, and forced into a car. His story matched rumors investigators had heard before. Search teams scoured barns and farmhouses near the border. Dogs sniffed fields. Helicopters scanned woods. But no evidence was found. Some detectives believed him. Others thought he was lying for attention. Meanwhile, Brianna's family endured each false lead like a reopened wound. Her car was re-examined years later, still holding secrets. Some believed she had driven into the barn herself in desperation. Others believed someone staged it. Rumors of trafficking or local men bragging about involvement persisted. Investigators chased every tip. Human remains found in multiple states tested, none were hers. The creepy phone call remained the loudest clue. Who was she meeting that night? Why hasn't that person spoken? In 2022, nearly 2 decades later, investigators announced they were retesting evidence with advanced forensic genealogy. The same tool that caught the Golden State Killer might finally solve Brianna's case. Her parents still hold vigils, refusing to let her name fade. The barn has been torn down, but its shadow lingers. The last phone call still chills investigators and families alike, a riddle with no answer. Until the truth is found, Brianna remains everywhere and nowhere, her story frozen on a dark Vermont road, haunting America's memory. The prison walls echoed with the weight of broken promises and half-truths. Detectives had walked out of that dim interview room shaken. The inmate's confession, his claim that he had been there the night Brianna disappeared, still lingered in their ears. They knew he might be lying, but his words matched too many of the strange rumors that had haunted Montgomery for years. The farmhouse, the struggle, the silence afterward. Whether fact or fantasy, he had cracked the case open again. But outside the prison, another storm was brewing. The phone at the local police department rang late one night, carrying a voice that pulled them into new territory. A man at a Vermont bar had overheard a conversation, someone boasting that Brianna had been taken to a remote wooded area, her body left where no one would ever stumble across it. For the investigators, it was the cruel cycle all over again. Every tip carried hope. Every tip carried pain. But this one, whispered between the clink of beer glasses, was different. The man giving the tip had no reason to lie. He sounded frightened. His voice trembled, as if saying the words out loud might bring danger to his own doorstep. Within days, search teams were mobilized. Trucks rolled out, officers pulled on boots, and the woods near the Canadian border were alive with flashing lights. Helicopters circled above, dogs sniffed the earth, and every spade of dirt brought new anticipation. The woods themselves seemed to fight back. Thick roots clawed up from the ground, branches scraped across searchers' arms, and the cold Vermont wind cut through heavy jackets. It was the kind of place where secrets could sleep for decades. Each step echoed with possibility. Was this where Brianna had been hidden all along? For Brianna's family, the waiting was unbearable. Her mother, Kelly, sat at home clutching a phone, unable to breathe every time it rang. Her father, Bruce, drove the edges of the search area, headlights piercing the night, as if he might be the first to see something. They had been through this before, search after search that led to nothing. But this time, their hearts whispered that maybe, finally, they were close. On the third day of digging, searchers uncovered bones. The call came in quickly. Remains found. The words were enough to freeze everyone in place. But relief collapsed into heartbreak within hours. The bones were animal, not human. Deer, maybe. Nature's cruel trick. The search pushed on, uncovering scraps of fabric, a shoe, even weathered plastic bags. Each item was bagged, cataloged, and tested. Each one held promise. And each one, in the end, brought no answers. Back in town, the story once again spread like wildfire. At the diner, people leaned across booths whispering theories. At gas stations, heads shook as neighbors murmured that someone, somewhere, knew the truth. And still, the barn haunted them all. That photograph of Brianna's car, half swallowed by its wall, had burned itself into Vermont's collective memory. Investigators returned to the old evidence. They examined her Oldsmobile again, looking for fibers, hair, anything missed in 2004. New technology had cracked cold cases across the country. Why not Brianna's? The car, though, yielded little. Traces of DNA were found, but too degraded, too mixed to identify. It was another dead end, or so it seemed. The FBI was still watching. Their agents quietly pushed for something new, forensic genealogy, the very science that had brought down the Golden State Killer. If Brianna's case carried a hidden genetic clue, it could, in theory, unlock doors no witness ever could. Evidence from her car was once again boxed, labeled, and shipped to labs equipped with the latest tools. Meanwhile, her family fought to keep her name alive. Vigils were held each March, candles flickering outside the barn, though by now the building itself had been torn down. Its ghost remained in photographs and in memory. Kelly spoke to reporters year after year, her voice breaking but determined. Someone knows. Someone has to come forward. We just want to bring her home. And yet, time continued its cruel march. Tips dried up. The world moved on. Young faces who had known Brianna grew older, started families, but the memory of her laughter and her sudden disappearance still followed them. For those closest to her, she was frozen in time, 17 forever. But the silence didn't last forever. In late 2016, another inmate in a different prison spoke up. His story was eerily similar to the first man's. He claimed Brianna had been taken to a party, that drugs and violence had played a role, and that her disappearance had been covered up with threats and fear. Investigators leaned forward, hearts racing. Could this be the missing puzzle piece? But once again, when they pressed him, his story crumbled. Too many details borrowed from old news articles. Too many contradictions. Another cruel twist. Still, something nagged at detectives. Two men, years apart, both pointing to a version of the same story. Could both liars have stumbled onto the same lie? Or was there a truth buried in their overlap? As if fate wanted to torture the Maitland family further, another tip arrived. A woman swore she had seen Brianna alive, years after the disappearance, in a truck stop outside New York. The girl she saw had green eyes, the same shade as Brianna's. She had a scar above her left eyebrow, just like Brianna. But when investigators rushed to the location, The girl was gone, and no cameras had captured her. The story twisted again. Was Brianna alive? Was she taken into trafficking, hidden in plain sight? Or had grief and hope caused witnesses to see her in every stranger's face? By 2020, the case had reached the FBI's cold case division. A new generation of detectives, some too young to remember the original investigation, now pored over the files. They pinned photographs to walls: Brianna's smiling school portrait, the car in the barn, maps of Vermont's back roads. They retraced every step, every mile, every minute of March 19, 2004. And the same haunting question always returned: who was on the other end of the last phone call? That call remained the heart of the story. The friend she spoke to remembered her words, the casual mention of meeting someone. But no name was ever given. No one ever came forward. Whoever had been waiting for her in the dark had vanished into silence. One night, in the middle of reviewing the old call logs, a detective spotted something strange. A number, logged in the system, had been dismissed years earlier as a dead end. It belonged to a prepaid cell phone, one never registered, one that had since gone dark. But new technology allowed investigators to dig deeper into its connections. Slowly, a map of calls emerged. That number had been active in the days leading up to Brianna's disappearance, and it had pinged near Montgomery on the very night she vanished. Detectives leaned in. After nearly 2 decades, a new lead had finally appeared. Not a rumor, not a whisper, but hard data. They traced the phone's connections, building a small network of numbers it had frequently dialed. Among them was a name they recognized. A man already whispered about in early days of the case. A man who had denied knowing Brianna, but whose story had never quite held together. The revelation lit a fire under the investigation. Warrants were drafted. Witnesses were called again. Old friends of Brianna's were tracked down, asked if they remembered the man, the phone, the connections. Some shook their heads. Others admitted quietly that Brianna had been uneasy around him. One even recalled Brianna saying she didn't trust him, but she hadn't explained why. For Kelly, the news brought a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that progress was being made, dread that the answers might confirm her darkest fears. Bruce, ever determined, told reporters, "We've waited too long. Whoever did this has walked free for nearly 20 years. It's time." The town of Montgomery braced itself. Rumors stirred again. People whispered names over coffee, over fences, at grocery stores. Some swore they had always suspected. Others were shocked. And through it all, the ghost of the barn seemed to loom larger than ever. As the FBI worked in secret, one final twist arrived. A hunter, walking the woods not far from the Canadian border, stumbled across something half buried in the soil. It was small, weathered, but recognizable, a piece of fabric. Pale green, torn at the edges. Investigators rushed to the scene, hearts pounding. The item was carefully lifted, sealed, and sent for testing. For days, the lab worked in silence. And then, finally, the phone rang. A trace of DNA had been found. Not Brianna's. Someone else's. A profile that could, at last, be compared against the growing databases of suspects and genealogy. Detectives stared at the result. A name flickered onto their screens. Not a stranger. Someone who had lived close by. Someone who had been questioned years earlier. The weight of nearly 2 decades pressed down as they realized the truth. They might finally be at the edge of solving the mystery. But just as they prepared to move in, another call came through, one that would change everything.